Hello, BookTube. Welcome back to AusBooks, where it's just me talking about some Australian books I own physically and digitally, and just all that stuff. Really, we seem to be going in chronological order, which I kind of love. But what do we have today? Well, we're still in the 1700s, but we're starting to creep into the early 1800s now. And we're still talking about journals, of course, but we're going to be talking about the journals of Matthew Flinders. I have the text classics edition of it. This is a very good edited edition of his journals. Again, what do you want to say about Matthew Flinders' journals? But for those who don't know much about Flinders, I'll give you a quick breakdown of him. So he was born in 1774, right? And the reason he chose a nautical life, because he chose that life very, very young. What made him decide to live his life out at sea? And it was because he read Robinson Crusoe growing up, and that inspired him to choose that life. And at the age of 15, he joined the Navy, just casually. He done a lot of sailing, and in 1795, he actually went to Australia for the first time because he was British, and he went to Sydney. He done some exploring around Botany Bay and a lot of stuff like that. Spent some time during in Norfolk Islands and all that stuff, and doing like moving livestock and all that stuff. But where we really see Matthew Flinders come into his own, because this man was so smart. It was really in I can't know what year actually, but when he was in Australia, him and George Bass just casually circumnavigated all of Tasmania. They went around Tasmania, that island, and was like, "Yep, it's definitely an island." And that was just crazy. I don't think people were prepared for that. And yeah, he just casually done it. And then after he's like, "I'm gonna go home to England to marry my wife," and he did. And in 1801, he was given the command, the journey, the mission, if you would, to circumnavigate all of Australia, the entire continent itself. I don't think Flinders knew just how big Australia was. Again, by that point, I only think the main colonies were Sydney and a bit of Victoria too, but I don't think the majority of Australia had been explored by then. And so it turned out to be a bigger task than I think a lot of people back then were prepared for. But he was like, "I'm doing it." So he was given the HMS Investigator along with 88 men, which are all famous. He also took his cat too, which I love. And in 1801, he started a brutal, nearly 3 year long journey to circumnavigate all of Australia. And it was a success, yes, but there was a lot of tragedy on the way too, because the ship turned out to be rotted from the inside, and there was constant leakages throughout the trip. At one point, the ship's cutter capsized, and 8 men drowned. And that happened, and Flinders were going to name certain natural landmarks dedicated to those men along the way. But turns out Flinders done it. He literally done it. The mission was, at the end of the day, successful, of course. His maps were so detailed and just so perfectly done. His actual maps weren't updated for a good 100 years later, which is really crazy to think about. And yeah, he after that, Flinders' struggles wouldn't end because he attempted to sail home in 1803, right? But his ship had a leak again, and because of the waters he was in, he was captured and arrested by the French, and he was arrested and served 6 years in like a prison, pretty much. We don't know much about that time really because he stopped writing, but he returned home in 1810 where he pretty much within 4 years died of bad health. He had, I think, kidney failure. But then again, this man literally lived in most cramped conditions you can imagine his entire life. Constant dehydration too, I think, was another big factor. Just everything you could throw at someone in the 1700s, early 1800s. And he died at 40. Like, he died young. And in those last 4 years, he was putting together his journals because turns out the entire time he was circumnavigating Tasmania and Australia, Flinders was writing all of us down in travel logs. Like, he knew what he was doing, I feel like, deep down. And yeah, he published them, I think, posthumously. But the edition I have is the edited version. Again, these are bigger, but they're so good. This is a personal favorite of mine. Um, Again, it's kind of like Captain Cook in that you're hearing one of the greatest explorers, just their more personal reflections on their travels, really, as they're doing it. I feel like Flinders lets you in more than Cook does. Cook is very superficial in a lot of ways in terms of like, we done this, then this. Like, it's very monotony and kind of one note, where I think if you know the context of what Cook's doing, it kind of makes the text better. Where Flinders lets you in completely. He is like, this is what I done today. This is how I felt about it. He's telling you everything you want to know about, and it's not dry at all. It's actually quite fresh compared to a lot of other travelogues. I don't know if this is my favorite travel, like adventure nautical travelogue. I do think the Voyage of the Beagle still holds that place, but then again, they're different because Flinders is very much like Cook in that he has a way bigger responsibility for his travels, and then Darwin never did. Like, Darwin was just there for the fun to see and observe stuff and write it down, where Flinders and Cook were very much commanders of their ship. They had all the responsibility was placed on them through all the tragedy and all of the triumphs too. Because again, there were a lot of famous men who went on this voyage, a lot of famous moments with native people, of course, and just you know about it really. I feel like I don't need to explain this much, but then I feel like I do at the same time. But yeah, Flinders wrote all of it down, and it's an absolute recommend. Again, it's not as dry. I love it, to be honest. Would I recommend the entire complete journals of Matthew Flinders? Probably not, to be honest. I think if you're going to get an edited down edition, I think that's the best. It gets rid of all the boring parts that every journal has, especially voyage travel logs and all. They can tend to be a bit more dry if you don't know the context, I think, a bit. But Flinders is, I think, a bit of an exception to that. I think you would just have a blast with him. I did go through a massive phase of reading Flinders biographies a couple years ago. I read all of them, just casually, and I have two Rexide recommendations. If you want to do a biography of Flinders, they both have the same name. And I will preface, Flinders has a lot of biographies. He is someone that hasn't been left behind. Within the last 20 years, I literally think there's been like 4 or something like that. Even in the last 3 years, there's been 1. And they tend to be a bit hit and miss, if I'm being a bit honest. He leaves a lot of space for people to make their own opinions about him in a way that isn't, I feel like, as objective as it could be. A lot of them tend to, I think, focus on Flinders, the person, a bit more than his voyages, and I don't know. I feel like he's a hard person to kind of pin down, really. But The Life of Matthew Flinders by Ernest Scott. This was published in 1914. It's in Project Gutenberg. It's in the public domain because it's so old, and it's genuinely really great. It is a bit longer, but it is a bit too a bit too. I don't describe it. It doesn't challenge who Matthew Flinders was as a person. It's a bit too. Flinders was too perfect. It makes Flinders out to be a bit too perfect than I like. But again, I still think it's a really great read, and I think you should give it a try. But also, again, The Life of Matthew Flinders by Mariam Enstein, I think that's how you say it. Big 500-page biography of him. It's 2002, I think it came out. Those two are like my favorite ones to recommend. I don't own any of them, actually. I feel like if I ever see them, a copy of them, I'm snatching them up, to be honest. But even then, if you just get the Text Classics edition, Tim Flannery does a genuine great introduction to Flinders, tells you everything, gives you the context. You'll be fine, to be honest. And yeah, I think this is a personal favorite of mine. I don't know what to say. Flinders, his journals aren't as dry. He knew what he was doing. And yeah, that's your AusBook for today. The Journals of Matthew Flinders. An essential recommendation, in my opinion. And I just love it so much. I reread it for AusBooks today, and it was just so good. I would actually buy a copy of the complete journals at some point. I don't know if they're even reprinted anymore, or is it just like antique book collecting at that point? But I don't know, and I will keep an eye out for that. But yeah, go read Matthew Flinders' diaries, do a biography of him, do just a wiki scroll down of Flinders, and I think you'll be really interested in what he done, because he was a very intelligent man, and really an impossible task when you think about circumnavigating an entire continent. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, thank you so much for watching BookTube, and I will see you next time.